He graduated from Fort Knox High School, and I'll let him tell you when. He is an eagle, and he hasn't forgotten. Now, George has done lots of things in his life, and he's here to talk a little bit about some of the things he's learned, both through activities he's proud of and maybe some that not so much. And he understands what you are going through, having walked in your shoes. So this isn't hearing from someone who thinks they know. This is hearing from someone who's been there and done that. So this fine gentleman, his name is George Casey, and he has come to us, as I mentioned, from Florida. He's come up here with the intent to speak with students here at Fort Knox because he believes that this is one of the best places there is. And we appreciate that. And I want you to give your 100% attention to this gentleman, because not only are you going to learn some things, but you're also going to be entertained. And that's important too. So help me please welcome our guest speaker this morning, George Casey.
How's everybody doing this morning? All right. You guys aren't hype enough for me, so I want to see where everybody's at right now. This is how we used to do it back in the old school. Where's the class of 2019? 18, I'm sorry, 18. That was all right. How about class of 2017? Pretty good. Class of 2016. Class of 2015. All right. And my favorite group, the graduating seniors. Where's the class of 2014? All right. And I hope you guys have that same enthusiasm when you go out into the real world in a couple of months. It's going to be tough out there. Before I get started, I want to share a story with you. Now, this is one of my favorite stories, and I hope it'll entertain you as well. It's about an eagle who lost his egg. And it just as chance would happen, there was a hen that found that egg. And that hen took that egg back and sat on it until it hatched. It hatched an eagle. But this eagle was born into a chicken environment. He thought chicken thoughts. He dreamed chicken dreams. His biggest aspiration in life was to jump up on a fence pole and cock-a-doodle-doo like the roosters. You see, all the chickens that were surrounding him, they looked at him. And they knew he was different. They knew he was an eagle. But they didn't tell that eagle that, because they said if they told that eagle, he might try to eat him. He might try to eat him. But one day this eagle was playing out in the yard, and he saw a big shadow come across the ground. And on this particular day, he looked up higher than the fence post that he normally looked up to. He looked way beyond what he thought was possible for him. And he looked into the sky, and he saw an adult eagle flying with all his splendor. Well, on this day, this little eagle looked up and said, wow, I wish I could do that. Well, this adult eagle, as he flew in the sky, he came down and he talked to that little eagle. He said, son, you ain't no chicken. You're an eagle. You were born for greatness. You You have greatness in you. You were born to do great things in this lifetime. Your life is not meant to be hanging out with the chickens. You're an eagle. Your place is in the sky. And I talked to a young lady who told me a little bit more about eagles. And said eagles, a special thing about eagles, when eagles get tired, you know where they rest? You know where eagles rest? Eagles rest in flight. They rest in flight. It's greatness. There's greatness in you. There's greatness in all of you. Everyone who's graced this school, there's been greatness in them. But the first thing you have to do with greatness, you have to recognize it. You have to recognize greatness. And it took me some time to get it. In fact, as an eagle, I flopped several times. I flopped over and over and over. Where's the football team at? Is the football team in there? Y'all pretty quiet. What's going on? Where's the football team at? Oh, wow. Is this what it's come to? Well, let me give you a story of my background. When I came to this school as a freshman, I went out for the freshman football team. And we worked through practice, and we got up to what we call tour days. And practices were always tough. They were always hard. But one particular day when we were doing eagle floppers, anybody know what eagle floppers are? Do they call them eagle floppers anymore? Up downs? We were doing what's called up down. We called them eagle floppers at the time. And it's basically when you run in place, and when the coach blows the whistle, you hit the ground and come back up and run in place again. Well, we had did so many of these this day. As a fat kid, I would guess more than 1,000. But I'm sure it might have been a lot more like 2,000. Because by the time I got into it, I got to a point where I couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't feel my arm. Only thing I could feel was the pain. That's the only thing that I could feel was the pain. The pain of doing those eagle floppers. The pain of hitting the ground and barely picking myself up, barely having the energy to pick myself up. Well, during those eagle floppers, I put it in my mind. I put a number in my mind. That number was 5. To this day, it's been over 20 years ago. To this day, I will never forget that number. It was 5. I could only do 5 more eagle floppers before I was going to quit. If the coach didn't stop practice, I was going to quit. So I started counting down in my mind. I counted to 5. I counted to 4. Still barely picking myself up from the ground. Still barely able to feel my legs. Still, the only thing I could feel was the pain that was in my mind. That said 3 more. Just 3 more, and it's over. So I did 3. I did 2. Down to the last one. Down to the last eagle flopper. And I barely picked myself off the ground. I remember having to almost crawl myself up. But I got up on that last one, and I did just what was in my mind. I quit. Just that minute, I quit. I heard the coaches, "George, where you going?" I said, "Nah, coach, this ain't for me." I quit. So I quit, and I walked off the field. I walked through the shack, and I found my seat right outside the gate as I watched practice start to wind down. A few more eagle floppers. A few more up downs. That's all it was. Just a few more. But I didn't make it. I didn't make that 2 more, that 3 more. Those last few eagle floppers, I didn't make them because I already had in my head that I was going to stop. I already had it in my head that I was going to stop. And I talked to a teammate later on. He said, George, why'd you quit? We only did a couple more eagle floppers and practice was all over. He told me later, he said, in fact, the coach said that was his intention that day. To make us do eagle floppers until somebody quit. Until somebody quit. And guess who that somebody was? That somebody was me. I quit. Not because I didn't have it in me, but because I didn't have it here. And I didn't have it here. I didn't recognize the greatness that was already put inside me. So, what I'm here today to show you that there's greatness in everyone. No matter where you come from, no matter what background, if you're at this school, I believe you're a winner. If you're at this school, you're an eagle, which means there's greatness inside you. There's greatness inside each and every one of you. You know, I was, years later after I got out of high school, I went to the military, went to the United States Marine Corps. And after I got out of the Marine Corps, my dad gave me a packet of papers that he had collected over the years. And of those papers, he had all of my report cards from my elementary school to senior year in high school. And I pulled those out and I began to read them. And I began to think about the person that I was. And let's note that this is the person that I was. That same freshman year, I had 6 courses. By the time they sent out progress reports, I got 6 progress reports saying that I was failing or in danger of failing. And I'll read a couple of those for you. The first one is general business. It says George Casey is failing general business with a 63%. The reasons for notice: lack of effort shown in homework, talks too much in class, pays little or no attention, failure to turn in all homework, lack of participation in class. Suggestions and recommendations: George is always coming to class unprepared. No paper, no pencil, no book, no workbook, or homework. That was general business. Algebra 1. George Casey is in danger of failing Algebra 1. Reason for notice: shows little or no effort to make up missed assignments. Failure to turn in all homework assignments. Poor or low failing scores. Suggestions and recommendations: 3 zeros on homework, 2 incomplete assignment, and test scores were 85 and 63. Now read this last one is health. It was supposed to be one of those giving classes, but again, George Casey is failing health. The reasons: talks too much in class, pays little or no attention, failure to turn in all homework assignments, poor or low failing scores. This is who I was starting off during my freshman year. As you can see, I came to class unprepared. No pencil, no paper. I came to class and I didn't put any effort into making missed assignments, making up homework, or even doing homework for that matter. That's where I was. That's where I was. But see, whatever you do in life, every time you do that same thing, it's going to get easier and easier. So starting off with my freshman football season, I ended up quitting. Moving into my freshman year, I quit. But I didn't quit on anybody else, but I quit on myself. I quit on myself. And it became easier and easier and easier to quit. I'll tell you another story. And I'll come down. I want to get close to you. I was in a general business class. The teacher was Miss Allgood, Miss Jane Allgood. And it was wrapping up toward the end of the year. We were taking finals. We're going to take finals. And she announced it that day in class. She said, class, tomorrow we're going to be taking our exam, our final exam. It's going to count for a big portion of your final grade. And I thought about that, a big portion of my final grade. What was I going to do? Well, I knew there was no way that I could learn all this material overnight. There was no way I could learn all this material overnight. So what did I do? I went home that night. And I began to write down all the questions that I thought were going to be on the test. And I wrote down all the answers to the questions that I thought was going to be on that test. And when I got to class the next day, cheat sheet in hand, I slid it under my desk where there was easy access to it. But one thing happened, a funny thing happened as I started taking that test that day. I knew some of the answers. They locked in my head. I guess must have been when I started writing them down, the answers must have stayed in my head long enough for me to pass that test. So I got down 1, 2, 3. There was a couple I didn't know the answers to, but I made a pretty good guess. By the time I finished that test, I hadn't used my cheat sheet one time. And when I turned in the test, I got excited because I knew I had done well on the test. And as I got excited, my knee must have went up and revealed my cheat sheet. Just as Miss Allgood passed by to collect my test. I saw it, and she saw it as well. I didn't know what to say. All I did was laugh it off and say, Miss Allgood, you're gonna laugh at this. I had every intention to cheat on that test. I was going to cheat on that test. But when I started answering the questions, I knew the answers. And I didn't have to use that cheat sheet. I didn't have to use the cheat sheet. Well, Ms. Allgood was a pretty fair teacher. So she said, here's what I'll do. I'm gonna let you take the test over again because I believe you. But I'm gonna have to take off 15 points. Well, I took that test again. And even minus the 15 points, I still scored higher than I did on the last test. So my grade got better. That's that greatness I'm talking about. We want to rely on cheat sheets. We want to rely on this and that. We want to rely on other people sometimes. But the greatness that I'm talking about is inside yourself. You have to find that greatness. You have to identify that greatness. And the way to do that is you have to first know that it's there. You have to first know that you were designed for greatness. Everyone in this gym today was designed for greatness. You're 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 designed for greatness. And the reason why I keep saying that, because I want it to stick in your head. You have to believe that you're the greatest. You have to believe that you have that greatness in you. And all that belief is something that you think over and over and over again. There's a quote that said, I think, therefore I am. In order to be the greatest, you must first think you're the greatest. You have to first think you're the greatest. And once you find that greatness, once you know that greatness inside you, the way to grow that greatness is you have to recognize your desire. You have to recognize that what do you want to do in your life? What is it that you want to do in your life? Everybody was born for a purpose. Everybody was born for a reason. There's a quote by Mark Twain that said the two most important days in a man's life are the day he was born and the day he finds out why. So why were you born? What is your purpose? What is your purpose? See, I was lucky. I was lucky to eventually find my purpose. My purpose was to go through the things in life that I went through, but not for myself. You see, everybody has to pay a tuition in life. Life is not free. Nothing is free in life. Everything comes at a price. In life, we have to pay a tuition. And we pay that tuition with our lives. We pay that tuition with our lives. And see, I've dedicated my life to speaking to young people. Young people that are sitting in the seats that I used to sit in. You know, I learned through life that anything is possible. Anything is possible. You know, I come from a military family. To this day, both of my parents still loving, still together. A happy home, a happy family. And I want to draw that picture for you of a good life and show you that anything is possible. When I graduated Fort Knox High School in 1992, I sat down with the guidance counselor. And she asked me that very same question. She asked me, what are you going to do with your life? Now, seniors, I want you to really listen to this. She asked me, what was I going to do with my life? And I really didn't have a clue. I really didn't have a clue at that time. I didn't have a plan for my life. I didn't have a next step for my life. But I heard a lot of people talking about going to college. That was the plan. Either you go graduate and go to the military or go to college or go to work. I wasn't ready to go to work yet. So I said college. That was my answer. College. I left here and I went to the University of Louisville for 1 year. 1 year. And the reason I only went there for 1 year, because when I got there were no parents to tell me what to do. There was nobody to tell me when to wake up and when to go to bed. Every day was a party. Every day began to be a party. When I got to class on the first day and the instructor told me, I'm not going to take attendance. I don't care if you don't come except on test days. And that was an opportunity in my mind. I won't go to class unless it's test days. But when I got there on test days, I didn't know any of the answers. I don't believe a cheat sheet was going to get me through any of that. So I failed out. I failed out. I said, maybe college wasn't for me. So I went to Florida. I tried it out for a year. Same circumstances. Grades were like F, D, F, F, D. Those are my grades. So I came back from Florida. I came back to what was familiar to me. Fort Knox, Radcliffe, all of my friends. And see, we kicked up the party from that point. We had an apartment on 1 street, Elm Street in Radcliffe. We had an apartment, but every day was a party. Every single day was a party. So what happened? In less than a few months, I got evicted. I got evicted from that apartment. So I moved from there, I moved to Wood Creek, the next street over. Got an apartment there. The party didn't stop, it kept going. It kept going. And I got evicted from that apartment and moved across the street. Now I want you to imagine all these moves, never had a moving truck, but I had a lot of my partners that were with me. And what we would do is at night, late in the night evenings, we would move all the furniture from one apartment to the next, from one street to the next. So I stayed there for a little while. I got evicted from there and moved down the street. I got evicted from there and moved back on the first street. Moved off of there, got evicted from there and moved back to Wood Creek, but not in an apartment. I didn't move in an apartment when I moved back on Wood Creek the last time. I moved into a car. There was nobody else that would rent to me. So I ended up homeless, living in the backseat of a car. In cold months of Kentucky winter, in the backseat of a car. But I didn't have that car alone. I shared that car with two other people, both former Eagles. And sometimes we had to fight for the back seat. We had to fight for the back seat. What was I good at this point? I was good at hanging out. I was good at partying. I was good at lying. I was good at stealing. And eventually got into doing some things that I wasn't too proud of. I started selling drugs. I started robbing people. A lot of my buddies were slowly going off to prison and going off to jail. But I was right there with them. I was taking the same journey with them. I was on the path to one or two things: jail or death. Jail or death. And it all started from how I acted. Coming to class unprepared. Little or no effort. Quitting. You see, what you do one time becomes easier to do 2 times. Becomes easier to do 3 times. Becomes easier to do 4 times. You know, I heard one time, if you do what's easy now, life will be hard later. But if you do now what is hard, what you do later will be easy. You see, I ended up in Hinesville, Georgia, homeless, still ripping and running, doing what I wanted to do in the street. Still homeless, but I made my way, doing things that are definitely to this day I'm not proud of. But that's who I was. That's who I was. There was a cousin of mine that stayed in Hinesville, Georgia at the time, and she saw how I was living. She saw how I was living. And she sat me down at the kitchen table, and she asked me that same question that the guidance counselor asked me. George, what are you going to do with your life? What are you going to do with your life? Well, nothing had changed at this point. I still didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I still didn't have a plan for my life. But just like when I was talking to the guidance counselor, I told my cousin the first thing that came to my mind. I told her I had planned or thought about going into the United States Marine Corps. And she looked at me again. She looked at me like no one had ever looked at me. I can feel her eyes looking right into my soul. And she said, no, don't think about going to the Marine Corps. She said, you need to do that. You need to go into the Marine Corps. You need to get your life together. So I said, you know, I'll do it. But at the time, right here in Radcliffe, Kentucky, I still had a warrant for my arrest. Had a warrant for my arrest for missing a court date. And to get that warrant taken off, there was a fine of $350. I didn't have that $350 anywhere on me, anywhere that I know I can get it. But what my cousin did that day changed my life. She changed my life. See, she was that adult eagle that looked at me and reminded me that I'm an eagle, that I was born for greatness. And she gave me that $350 check. He said, go down and pay those people and go in the Marine Corps. So that's what I did. I went to the United States Marine Corps. The day I got to Parris Island, South Carolina, was November 26, 1995. I pulled into Parris Island. It was all lit up. There was a little drill instructor about this big. Tough joker though, pretty tough guy. He came on the bus that we were on, and he demanded that everybody get off of what he called his bus. And he demanded that everybody get on what he calls his footprints. And we had to stand on those footprints at attention. Now, as I stood there at attention, I could literally feel all those who had come before me. I could feel the presence of Marine. I wanted to be a Marine. I had a desire to become